Okay, my name is Megan Kleinstra. I am interviewing Jeff Shamess. He was born May 2nd, 1979. He served in the Air Force and his highest rank achieved was captain. This interview is taking place on May 23rd, 2017 in Wyoming, Michigan. And this interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. So, I'm just going to start out. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Lakenheath, England, and I grew up as a military brat, so we moved around a lot. The longest we were anywhere was 3 years, and then by the time we got to high school, we were moving every year or less. So, a bunch of places.
So was it your dad who was in the military?
Yeah.
Where did he serve, or what did he serve in any wars, like in the front lines or anything?
He did not serve on the front lines in any wars. There were a number of wars that went on over the course of his career. He was in for 30 years, and in the Air Force.
So, since you grew up with your dad being in the Air Force, did that kind of influence your decision to join the Air Force?
For sure. The military was almost everything I knew. When one of your parents is in, then you move around with them. You're not around family, and so that becomes your context. You're on a military base most of the time. I remember turning 10, and that's when I got to get my first ID card, and I became a man.
So you enlisted then?
Well, I went to the Air Force Academy. My uncle and my father both went to the Air Force Academy, and then I went there, and then my two younger brothers followed me there. And then coming out of there, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant.
So then what did basic training, or what did it look like once you got in there?
What did basic training look like?
Yeah, what kind of things did you do? And
I was wholly unprepared for basic training. We had this nice time at the Association of Graduates building where they have some snacks. You're seeing your parents for the last time, and then you say goodbye and you get on a bus. And as soon as you get on the bus, some cadres start yelling at you. They're all in snappy uniforms. You don't have a uniform yet. You just have this bag, and they're telling you how to sit and not to look around, not to say anything, and all of that. And they yell at you for that whole time, and then you get off the bus, and you're not getting off the bus fast enough, and then you stand on some footprints that are painted on the ground, and they tell you about what you're joining into, and it's a wake-up call.
yeah. So was it difficult then to obviously change pretty much how you live?
It was mostly psychologically difficult, that first piece. They take any sense of identity that you had before away. It's really pretty intriguing, and then are planning to rebuild you. So your first name no longer exists. Your way of speech no longer exists. There's 7 basic responses, and that's the only way you're allowed to communicate. They shave your head. You have a uniform. Everybody looks the same, and yeah.
So after basic training, what did you what was your job basically when you were there, when you first started, I guess?
Well, at the Air Force Academy, you have basic training, and then you start school and you're a cadet. As a freshman, there's lots of different sort of derogatory names for freshmen, like smack or plebe or whatever. And so basic training sort of continues for the bulk of that first year. until you finally are treated somewhat more normally. But that piece at the academy, you're going to school. And so after that, then I had a little bit of vacation time after you graduate, and then you go to your first duty assignment. And I started as a cop, which is security forces, so they do law enforcement and security, and start learning things on the job, and then they send you to school.
So did you ever serve overseas, or was it all basically, where were you based, I guess?
I was based initially for my first assignment at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, which is on the west side of Missouri. The B-2 bomber is there. I was there not all that long. Graduated the academy in May 2001, and then September 11th happens just some months later. And so that was a real awakening. And then my second duty assignment was in Kleinbrogel in Belgium.
So what after 9/11 happened? How did that like change how your day-to-day was set up?
Huge. So I started as a flight commander, which is like a shift commander. So I had around 100 folks that I was responsible for. After September 11th, they doubled the number of posts. So we had all these folks augmenting the security forces. So we had security posts all over the place. And this is in Timbuktu, Missouri. We're out Knob Noster. Ever heard of that? That's where Whiteman is located, and there's less than 5,000 people that live there. Nobody's heard of it. And but we've got security like crazy, and that went on for a long time before things started to de-escalate.
So, what did you kind of do in Belgium? Were you just kind of in charge over, like, what kinds of things did you do, I guess?
Yeah, Belgium was an unusual assignment. We were a small U.S. detachment on a Belgian air base. So they'd call us GSUs, or geographically separated units, because our main operating base was someplace else. So in our case, it was about 2 hours away in Germany. And so we were there to support a NATO mission on that Belgian air base. And so for my part, I had switched career fields by that time, so now I was in a field called services, which did the way I normally explain it, it's a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't fit anywhere else. We did that stuff. So it was food service to mortuary affairs. And on that Belgian air base, because it was so small, it was not as many of the things that are normally in services. So we had food service and some of those other pieces. We also had, I was responsible for some medical techs. We had a lodging person. We had IT folks, finance person, some other admin folks, and so it was a conglomerate of support functions.
So, was there anything like besides, obviously your dad was in the Air Force, was there anything else that like drew you to going into the Air Force, or?
The military sort of been in the blood for a long time. So my grandfather on my dad's side, he kind of raised in a real in a very abusive home. My great-grandfather, after he immigrated to the United States, got involved with the mob, and just was a really bad father. And my grandfather and his brothers were growing up to go along the same track. Then the draft came out for World War II, I think. Anyway, he got into the military, and did not perfectly straighten him out. Most of his war stories are him doing mischievous things, but it did take his life in a different direction, but which was much more positive than the other. And fought at the Battle of Bulge. Was awarded a Bronze Star. A number of other things. And so it was that, and he, and then 2 of his sons went to the Air Force Academy, so that, and then just the experience of being around the military, it seemed like it was the right fit.
So you mentioned he did mischievous things. Was there anything mischievous that you did that you can talk about?
I did. The embarrassing things. I was not
You don't have to
so much mischievous. So when I was at Whiteman, it gives you a sense of just how stealth the B-2 stealth bomber is. I was driving around on the flight line, and it was nighttime. There's some lights out there, but not a whole lot of lights out there. It's difficult to see what's out there. It's also difficult to see where the lines are, because there's certain lines you're not allowed to cross. And then it's difficult to see those airplanes. So I was heading for a head-on collision with a B-2 bomber, which cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion, with my rinky-dink pickup truck, and just happened to notice it in enough time to move out of the way. It wasn't, we still had a ways to go, but the shock was pretty extreme.
So did you ever, what kinds of planes did you fly? Did you get to fly the B-2?
I did not fly, so I was not a pilot. I did get to go see inside of it, but that's as close as I got to that.
So when you were the captain, what did that entail as your job?
Well, as a captain, that was really just my rank. So, and then I pinned that on over in Belgium. My job did not change from first lieutenant to captain there because I was still at the same position. But
so did you have any more men under you when you were captain, or?
The most I had underneath me was when I was at Kleinbrogel, because of the number that increased after September 11th. And I probably had more responsibility during a short term at Whiteman as well, because I filled in for my boss while he was deployed. In Belgium, it was a small unit, so it was more of the kinds of things that I was responsible for.
So, are you still in the military then, or? I'm
not right now.
Okay.
I have an application in to serve as a chaplain, and could have possibly been the final interview for that tomorrow, but that's been postponed to June 15th.
Oh.
So
do you still keep in contact with those that you served with?
I keep in contact with some. Both of my brothers are still in some form. So my middle brother got out and is now in the West Virginia Guard and flies for them. And my youngest brother is still in. He's a combat controller down in Florida, which is a special forces part of the Air Force. And then a couple of my buddies are pilots, and just keeping up with them.
So, how has being in the Air Force affected your life?
Pretty seriously. So, I was not happy with the Air Force Academy for a while after I graduated from that, because it was a challenging time. I've come to really appreciate the time that I had there. Part of it was just was growing up. The other thing that the Air Force gives you, and I think the military in general, it gives you responsibility for things that no one in the civilian world would ever think about giving you responsible for, at least at that level of maturity. And so sometimes you make mistakes, but the opportunity to learn is huge. So learning how to lead people, a lot of people that know their craft a whole lot better than you do, are older than you are, a whole lot of people with different specialties. It was just learning how to respect people's gifts, and so just a lot of, it made me a lot of who I am today and how I think about things.
So, what led to you wanting to become a chaplain?
I was converted my senior year of college at the Air Force Academy, and a major part was being in at Whiteman Air Force Base, and just the need for competent ministers, and then being in the military and the impact of chaplains. Having grown up in the military as a brat, I was raised Roman Catholic and saw a number of priests. Most were not very impressive. I had the good fortune of running into a couple of fantastic chaplains while I was in active duty. One of my brothers did not. He was, and I won't share that story, but there's just obvious huge need for ministry in the military. You've got folks that are at that critical point in life. They're on their own for the first time. They're away from family. They're trying to figure out, how do I do life for me? Marriages are difficult, finances are difficult, and add to that, you're maybe in a difficult situation with work, or more. You're on the front lines, and you're seeing friends get messed up, and so there's lots of questions. And there's a great need for good answers, and a chaplain is in a unique place to be able to minister those answers.
That's so cool. So is there anything that you would want to share for people to that I could tell people that the military, that you've learned, I guess, besides obviously what you already said, but...
Well, the military is a phenomenal organization. Our military, the United States military, is the most powerful, competent military the world's ever seen. And so it's a privilege to have served. I hope to serve again, and I hope I'm appreciative of where the broader country stands with respect to our military now versus, say, after Vietnam or during Vietnam. I'm grateful for that, and I just encourage people to think about the military if they're looking to serve, and then to be thankful for those who do serve. So.
Well, thank you for letting me interview you, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah.